So this brief lecture covers sentence structure, and it's the first of 2 lessons on sentence structure. And in this, we're going to review basic parts of speech and basic sentence parts, and finally, I want you to understand different types of clauses. So the first part of this is a review, and this lecture assumes that you know the parts of speech, right? Nouns, verbs, adjectives, etc., and that you can identify them in a sentence, right? This lesson also assumes that you know the basic parts of a sentence, right? The subject, the predicate, and direct object, and can identify them in a sentence. Now, I'm going to review those very quickly, but if you need more review, check out a grammar review, and the link is here. All right, so let's review the basic parts of speech. Remember that a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea, right? So examples of person might be, MrBrayman or your cousin or Justin Bieber. A place might be Seattle, Washington, Hawaii, your kitchen, right? All these different things, ideas. Remember that ideas are nouns too. Students often have a hard time with that. So something like honor is a noun, or love is a noun. Sometimes love is a verb, but we can also use love as a noun. Remember that pronouns take the place of nouns, right? So we have personal pronouns like him, her, it, he, and they. We also have demonstrative pronouns like this or that or those. And these demonstrative pronouns sometimes work like adjectives, right? If I say these shoes are dirty, then these is acting as an adjective. Sometimes demonstrative pronouns can act like pronouns, though, if I just say these are dirty. Right? So keep that in mind. Remember that a verb is an action, a state of being, or an auxiliary to the action or state of being for another verb, right? So action verbs are things like jump, or running, or climbed, or sleep, right? Those ones are usually pretty easy to pick out. The state of being is also a verb, and these are harder for students to pick out. Is actually a verb, right? If I say, my dog is red, right? Is the verb there, right? Or if I say became, right? I became sleepy. That's a change in state of being. It's a state of being verb. Also, we have auxiliary verbs, words like had, or not, or may, or could, right? I say, I could go to the store if it weren't raining. Right? Could is an auxiliary verb, and it's an auxiliary to the verb go. Right, and so now let's review basic sentence parts. Right? Remember, the subject is the main noun or pronoun in a sentence. The subject is the thing or person or idea that is doing the action or is in the state of being. Right? The predicate is the main verb or verb phrase in a sentence. It is the main action or main state of being in a sentence. Right? If you don't have a subject or if you don't have a predicate, you have an incomplete sentence. So for example, if I say, my dog is furry, right? Dog is the subject, is the predicate. Right? If I say, your sister seems friendly, right? Sister is the subject, seems is the predicate, right? Seems is a state of being verb. If I say, the guy next door will become an attorney after he passes the bar exam, right? Guy is actually the subject. He's the one doing the becoming, right? He will become. That's the predicate, will become. Right? Very often we want to look for the main action or main state of being. That's the predicate. And then whoever or whatever is doing that predicate, that's the subject. After he passes the bar exam, that's a dependent clause. We're going to look at those later in this lecture. I might be able to come over to your house after dinner, right? I is the subject. I'm doing the action or in the state of being. Might be able to come is the predicate. So notice that sometimes predicates are rather long phrases made up of multiple words. Right? So that concludes our review of sentence parts and parts of speech. And so if that went too fast for you, go to the grammar review on MrBrayman.Info and study up on that a little bit more. And I have some exercises there for you to practice with. So to be able to look at larger sentence structures, we have to understand clauses and phrases. Now, for a lot of you, this is new learning. I don't expect you to know this. If you do, that's nice. But, the key learning is here. This is the new stuff, right? So a clause is a group of words within a larger sentence that has a subject and a predicate. A phrase is a group of words within a larger sentence that is missing either a subject or predicate. So clauses come in two types, right? We have independent clauses. An independent clause could be a complete sentence if it were all by itself. And indeed, as we're going to see, simple sentences are just single independent clauses. And dependent clauses. Even though it has a subject and a predicate, a dependent clause cannot be a complete sentence. And so you just need to remember, independent, by self, dependent, not by self. That's how we can remember those, right? And so let's look at some examples here of independent clauses, right? And these are all the underlined parts. One way you can test for independent clauses is to take out all the other stuff in the sentence, right? So I could take out at the top of the stairs, and I could just say by itself, my cat loves to lay by the heater. And that would be a complete sentence. You would know what I was talking about, right? If I say, I get hungry, that's a complete sentence, right? That makes sense to you. After workout makes more sense. It's more detailed, it's a more interesting sentence, but I get hungry could still be a complete sentence. Sometimes we join independent clauses, and those are called compound sentences, which we're going to look at later in this lecture, right? So I was very hungry could be a complete sentence, and I ate a sandwich could be a complete sentence as well. And like I said, sometimes in the case of simple sentences, that single independent clause is the whole sentence, like I am tired. So the example here of dependent clauses, these are italicized, right? So when I get home from school is dependent, right? If I walked up to you in the hallway at school and I said to you, when I get home from school, and then I walked away, you would be very confused, right? If I walked up to you into the hallway and said, I always take a nap, you'd go, okay, that would make sense to you. It wouldn't be very detailed. You might wonder why I said that, but you would at least understand that as being a complete sentence, right? Same thing here. If I walked up to you and said, because mine is out of gas, you would recognize that as an incomplete sentence. You would not know what I meant, right? So as we look at these examples here, we see that the dependent clauses need something else in order to make sense. The independent clauses, the parts of these sentences that are in regular text, we could put those by themselves and they would still make sense. Right? Dependent clauses, they're not easy to spot, but if you recognize that they almost always start with subordinated conjunctions, they'll be a lot easier to see. And I don't expect you to memorize this list, although over time you'll just recognize common subordinating conjunctions like because or if. Sometimes words like, well, we don't even really use whereas very much in English anymore, so I wouldn't really expect you to memorize that. But you should recognize that because and after and if, you should recognize those as being subordinating conjunctions, right? So let me back up a slide here, right? Notice each one of those dependent clauses starts with one of those subordinating conjunctions, okay? And this table, by the way, is in the grammar review at MrBrayman.Info. Or you could just go to Google and look up subordinating conjunctions in English, and you'd probably find a table just like this. All right, so that's it. Thanks for watching. There is a part 2 to this lesson where we look at sentence structures like compound and complex sentences, so be sure to watch that lecture as well. Thanks.